welcome and thank you so much for joining us this evening for another Restless event with our partners, My Menopause Centre. This evening, we're looking at making love during the menopause. Before I hand over to Helen, who will chair this evening's event, I want to remind you to please post your questions and thoughts in the chat function at the bottom of your screens, and feel free to post throughout the presentation. There'll also be time for questions at the end. The event will run for about an hour, and we are recording it, and so a recording will be mailed to everyone who's registered. So I'll hand now over to our panel chair, Eleanor Moyle, who is co-founder of My Menopause Centre.
Hi, thank you so much, Aideen, and good evening, everyone. It's great to have you all here this evening. I'm Eleanor Moyle. I'm the co-founder of My Menopause Centre, and Dr. Claire Spencer, who co-founded My Menopause Centre with me, and I are really passionate about empowering women with evidence-based information and advice on all things menopause, because we believe this is a time to thrive in life and not just survive it. Now, there are many taboos around the menopause, but probably one of the biggest taboos is around menopause and sex and loss of libido. As you will have seen from the invite to this event, various studies have shown that anywhere from 40 to 50% of menopausal women experience a loss of sex drive, and around 1 in 3 experience vaginal dryness related to the menopause. And I know from talking to Dr. Surya, who I'll introduce you to in just a moment, that she believes this is underestimated, as many women are very sadly too embarrassed to talk about these symptoms, even with their doctor. So I'm delighted to be joined by a panel of brilliant women, all experts in their fields this evening. I'll start by introducing Dr. Surya Gupta-Wright, who I'm delighted to say works with us in My Menopause Centre. Dr. Surya is passionate about women's health and menopause care, and she's worked in obstetrics and gynecology for many years. She holds diplomas from the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Health, and she is also a member of the British Menopause Society. She's previously worked with the Menopause Research Unit in London, where she was involved with seeing menopause patients with complex problems, menopause research projects, and teaching health professionals about the menopause. And as well as her clinic at My Menopause Centre, she's an NHS GP and a GP appraiser. And I'm honoured to work with Dr. Surya in our clinic and to have such a brilliant doctor with us. Now, those of you who have attended some of our events previously will see two familiar faces here, the brilliant Trudy Hannington and Eleanor Gardner. Now, Trudy is a senior psychosexual therapist. She's got a ton of experience. She leads a team of five psychosexual therapists at the Ledger Clinic in Doncaster, South Yorkshire. And she's worked in this area for over 25 years and has specialised in this area in 2002 after training at the Porterbrook Clinic at Sheffield. Her specialist interest is in combining medical treatments with sex therapy to optimise outcomes for her patients. And she has a special interest in menopause, in supporting women to access up-to-date treatment and evidence-based information, so they can make an informed choice about the best treatment options to suit them. So it's really brilliant to have Trudy here. And I know she'll certainly liven up the conversation when it comes to getting her advice. Now, Eleanor is a brilliant physiotherapist. She has a wealth of experience and insight into the best medical devices, vibrators, and lubrication. And she's worked in this area since 2007. She founded Pelvic Relief in 2013, bringing together and manufacturing a range of products and supplements for pelvic health to manage conditions such as painful sex, incontinence, and pelvic pain. She's previously worked for the SES company, manufacturers of organic lubricants and vaginal moisturizers, and she regularly attends medical conferences, including the British Society of Sexual Medicine and the British Menopause Society's annual conferences. So as you will see, these are brilliant women with a wealth of expertise, and we're all here to help you and support you with your questions on this area. So I'm going to start off with a question for you, Dr. Surya. So we know that in our conversation tonight, we're going to start off by looking at the gynecological symptoms, the causes and solutions, because it's hard to think about even beginning to enjoy sex if you're in pain. And then we'll move on to the ways of why we experience a loss of sex drive and what we can do about it. So Surya, as I mentioned, so many women experience vaginal dryness, and menopausal painful sex is something that people are searching, we know, a lot for on Google. Is this something that you also see in your clinics? And do you also feel like Dr. Claire that it's underestimated?
I think it's really underestimated. So I think, unfortunately, women do feel embarrassed about talking about it, and they may be happy to talk about their mood, they may be happy to talk about their flushes, but sometimes that comes down the bottom of the list, and it may be something that's kind of there, but they may not volunteer that information unless they're specifically asked. If you go to a specialist, then I think that's fine, and the specialist is going to get there and they will ask those questions, and that will get discovered. However, I think if you go to your GP and that's a big problem for you, you've only got 10 minutes usually an appointment, and it may be that it becomes one of those things that does keep getting brushed under the carpet and not dealt with, and just not talked about.
So your advice would be, don't be embarrassed and ask for help, speak to your GP.
Just talk about it, and maybe make it the first thing you say. Or actually, if you are going to see your GP with menopause issues and there's a lot of things, write down your list of all the problems so that you don't go out and have forgotten something. Or maybe even if you feel there's a lot to talk about, see if you can get a double appointment so you've got time to go through all the things that you need to and would like to talk about and that are important to you.
Excellent advice, Surya. And then if we step back and think about vaginal dryness as we go through the menopause transition or painful sex, what are the causes? Why does this happen? And particularly as we get older?
So I think probably lots of the people here tonight will know a little bit about the menopause, and that, at the time of menopause, hormone levels, estrogen, progesterone and testosterone do start to fall. And the vaginal dryness and the discomfort that women can get having sex, one of the things that can be a big problem is the falling of the estrogen levels. Estrogen is one of our female hormones. It helps to keep tissues a little bit more elastic. It helps your body in the production of the natural lubricants that you have in the vagina, and also it's not just the vagina, but I think importantly the vulval tissues, which is the outer parts of your labia, the clitoris, all around there, all of those tissues will start changing without the estrogens as the levels start falling at the time of the menopause.
And then what would you recommend then if somebody is suffering from vaginal dryness? What's the best way to manage it and to treat it, Surya?
So obviously HRT is going to be helpful. But interestingly, if you take HRT, most women these days tend to take their HRT as a patch or a gel, possibly with a progesterone tablet or some other type of progesterone as well. Interestingly, that doesn't always give you the amount of estrogen you specifically need to make the vaginal symptoms and the bladder symptoms better. And so often, even though you may be taking a reasonable dose of estrogen systemically, so through the rest of your body, it may be that you need some vaginal estrogen as well. And there are a few different ways that can be done. So that can be done through pessaries, which you insert into the vagina. You normally do a couple of weeks initially and then twice weekly. Long term, basically, you don't need to keep stopping and starting. There are some creams which you can use as well, or alternatively, and there is a little rubbery ring that can be used that releases estrogen, which some women really like because it goes into the vagina and it stays there for 3 months. So you're not having to remember to keep inserting those pessaries twice a week.
Very good. And I know some women who can't take HRT wonder, maybe they've had a hormonal cancer. They wonder if they can take a vaginal estrogen. What would your advice be in that situation?
Generally, yes. And I think, at one point we were avoiding giving it to women with, say, breast cancer, for example. But I think the research, the way we do things has very much changed. And, I think most of the time it's absolutely fine to take. And, that can be a great relief for people who are suffering from those symptoms.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So I've just popped a link into the chat to an article we have on the website about vaginal changes. I'm just about to pop something in on vaginal estrogens. I should have said at the top, if you have any questions, please do pop them into the chat and we'll cover as many as we can. But then also remember that we're not permitted to give any personal medical advice, but we can, of course, comment on general questions. And remember, you should always speak to a medical professional before acting on any information provided. So Surya, that was very clear. Thank you for that. And as I said, folks, more detailed information just popped into the chat if you want to follow up on anything after this evening's event. So Eleanor, so Surya's spoken about the causes of vaginal dryness and what might cause painful sex, and the important role that HRT or vaginal estrogens can play. Clearly, you look a lot at the products that can help and the lubrication. So what products and lubrication would you recommend that women can think about?
Yeah, it was really lovely to hear you, Surya, talking through that, because it is a really big problem for a lot of women. And vaginal estrogen is going to be that first line treatment, which is really, really helpful. Alongside that vaginal estrogen, it's really important to have a look at vaginal moisturizers and lubricants. So if we just split those into to just describe the differences between those two things. So a vaginal moisturizer is going to be there to manage day-to-day dryness of vagina and vulva, regardless of whether you want to have sex. This is just really for comfort, and it can be used alongside a vaginal estrogen. So a vaginal moisturizer is there to rehydrate the tissues, to deliver water back to those tissues that have dried out. And it can be used internally and externally. If you're using something like Vagifem, a pessary, it's a really nice, because sometimes if there is a lot of atrophy and dryness, using a moisturizer alongside can really improve comfort levels. If you're using a cream estrogen, you might want to use it on days you're not using your cream. So, but it's just a lovely additional thing to have in your toolbox. The important thing to know, and I've done a lot of research on vaginal moisturizers, so I consider myself to be somewhat of an expert, but it is really about a good quality moisturizer. So there is plenty out there that is actually going to unfortunately exacerbate your problems. So we want them to be pH matched to the vagina. We don't want them to contain any nasties that are going to be irritating and actually exacerbate the dryness. So I really do recommend the Yes range of vaginal moisturizers. They are designed by women. They are really a superb range of products. They're really good with their sampling policy, so you can always ask for some samples to try them to make sure they suit you. So the vaginal moisturizer is sort of for day-to-day use. And then they do a superb range of lubricants. So lubricants are going to be to add extra lubrication for sex, for smear tests, for if you're using vaginal trainers or dilators or sex toys, which I can talk a little bit about. And the Yes range do two excellent lubricants. They do a water-based lubricant, which is a very natural feeling lubricant, again, pH matched to the vagina, and an oil-based lubricant, which it's important to know that's not condom compatible, but it is a really long-lasting lubricant. So a lovely tip, which I'm sure Trudy will know as well, is using the oil based on first or on yourself, which will really protect those tissues, and then the water-based can go on top or on your partner, and the two will glide over each other and really mean that you've got this longer lasting lubrication. So I think getting your lubricants, vagina moisturizers right, secondary to chatting to your doctor about your some local estrogen, is a really good first step to just control that local the local dryness and really get that tissue more supple again and more comfortable.
That's great, Eleanor, really clear. And I've just popped a link in as well to Eleanor wrote a brilliant blog for us about the best sex toys and lubrication for menopause. So all of the detail and the SES products she mentions and all that advice are contained in there as well. And we've got some really great questions coming through in the chat, which we're going to come to, and one very relevant one for now. So I'm going to pop it in, and Trudy, this might be for yours. Maybe you've got some good insights into this. If you can see the question there from the third question, and from the lady whose name begins with T. And really, I suppose the gist of it is preparing in advance. And, I suppose the issues around using for the first time, sometimes it can feel quite intimidating, can't it, or inhibiting when you've never used sex toys or lubrication or anything like this. And then, you find yourself in your 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s and you're doing this. So, Trudy, hopefully you've had a chance to look at that question. And any thoughts or advice on?
Yeah, what I say when I see my clients is that there's nothing worse, is there, that, you're kissing, everything seems to be going well, and then you kind of have a freeze moment. You say, just hold it there while I just get all my potions and lotions out, and, you're trying to put everything on, and rather than sort of already having them at a place where they are, perhaps the lid's already off, if you knew it might happen that time, and say, oh, let me just play with this with you. I'll put you some on, you put me some on, so that it becomes part of the sexual play, just like maybe using a vibrator or, it's a toy. So, I would be doing that much, much earlier, rather than, are we going to have sex? Are we not going to have sex? It's a bit like for men. Do I take the blue pill or not take the blue pill? So, if we're ready beforehand, I think it's so much better. And then make it just a part of lovemaking. Lubricants are really nice. I encourage them with young women who aren't menopausal as well. It just makes everything so much more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's just keep going as well, isn't it? Because the more we do things, the easier it becomes, and the more the more we enjoy it, the more fun it can be.
Absolutely.
And I know, Trudy, we're going to come back to get a lot more advice for you from you in as well in a moment. Eleanor, just any other thoughts then on any particular products that you think might help somebody, if they're experiencing pain during sex?
Yeah, so a couple of things I wanted to sort of talk through. One are vaginal dilators, sometimes called vaginal trainers, but they are graded. So you can, I'll hold up a few. I don't know how well it sort of translates on Zoom, but they're graded devices, and they start really small. So this one is the size of my little finger. These are silicone, really flexible, very soft. And a vaginal trainer is, as that tissue loses flexibility and moisture and through the menopause, a vaginal trainer can help with the elasticity and the stretching of the vagina. And so how you would use it is you would start with the smallest one, lots of lubricant, make sure you're relaxed, comfortable, in a position where you're not going to be interrupted, and you'd insert it into the vagina and then try and relax, maybe 5 minutes. You can slowly move it around and get comfortable. And then as that size is comfortable, you'd slowly progress through the sizes to get to a point that you wanted to reach, whether it was to make sure that the vagina stayed supple and flexible for sex, for a smear test, for day-to-day comfort. So they're progressive, and they're really good tools to use proactively, to make sure you're managing that atrophy that is occurring naturally as you lose that estrogen. So they're really great. These trainers can all be bought individually or in graded sets, and they're really lovely. I particularly chose these because I love the silicone, which is softer and a little bit more flexible. They can be warmed up, so I run them under hot water sometimes, or suggest that before you use them, so they're sort of up to body temperature. They're often, they will be given out for anybody who's ever experienced pelvic radiotherapy. So if there's risk of damage to the vagina and the vaginal tissue, so you'd be given them as part of your treatment program if you were having any pelvic radiotherapy. So they're really useful aid to know about, and not many people know about them. We'll talk a little bit about the pelvic floor in a moment, I'm sure, but if the pelvic floor is very tight, that they can also help with just relaxing those muscles and making sure that your body stops associating penetration with pain, which can cause more sort of tension. So they're a really lovely device to know about. Another product that we've got on the website, and I've brought to show you tonight, is a product called Onut, which is a set of silicon rings. So they're really flexible again. And these rings sit on the base of the penis, and you can have up to 4 rings, or you can take them off. And what they do is help to control penetration depth. So this is particularly relevant if you're getting pain on deep penetration. So it might be because the vagina is slightly shortened, or the atrophy has meant there's slight shrinkage and deep penetration is causing pain. It's really useful post-hysterectomy if the vagina has been shortened. And what you do is these sit on the base of the penis, and they make this really comfortable buffer to make sure sex doesn't reach that point of pain. And the feedback we get from individuals, but partners too, who say it's really lovely to know that we can relax and enjoy sex, and I'm not going to have to think, is this reaching the point that is painful? So very unique little device, designed by a lady, again, seems to be the way, isn't it? But yeah, just really comfortable rings, and just a really innovative little product that for the right person, they can be a real game changer. So that's for if deep penetration is painful. That's really where that's going to make a difference for those ladies. And then one more that I've got just to show you now, and then I'm sure we'll have a few questions and things. But this is a product that we designed ourselves, Kato, which is our clitoral vibrator, and it's sort of palm-sized. So it's for external stimulation. It's really quiet. It's super soft. It's got 10 different cycles. It's got a lovely flat edge for massage. And what I wanted when we were looking for this product is just something that was really discreet, could sit on your sort of bedside table, really classy. It's £45, so it's very affordable. But vibration is a lovely aid when sensitivity has changed, perhaps when, you know, your gynae, your body is changing, and introducing vibration can be a really lovely thing to enhance pleasure. It can really help with pelvic floor tension, so it can actually help to relax the pelvic floor. And I think this is a really lovely entry point if it's not something you've considered before. So really proud of this little product, but it's getting some great feedback.
Talking of feedback, Eleanor, can I just say I had a client only last week who had bought one of those. I know I've got a sample one, so I'm able to show it in the clinic. And really just showing it on screen like that doesn't do it justice, because I can't explain just how lovely it feels. It almost feels like silk, and it is very quiet, because that can be off-putting. And I think the shape as well, that's also very nice. So it's not offensive maybe to a partner who doesn't want a phallic shaped vibrator. And it's very nice to use as a couple during penetrative sex as well. It's I can't praise it enough. The text message I got back off the lady was thumbs up on that message. So because she said, oh, I've got my new toy, and then the next day she messaged with a thumbs up. So thought I'd just give you that feedback.
Oh, look, Eleanor, well done. Brilliant, lovely feedback, Trudy. Thank you for sharing, and well done, Eleanor. You know, this is brilliant to see women designing solutions for women. You know, this hasn't happened in days gone by, and it's just wonderful to see it now. And it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there to do this. So really well done, Eleanor, for doing something to help all of us. And Eleanor I put a link into Eleanor's website, Pelvic Relief, and she's very kindly giving a 10% discount for the My Menopause Centre community and the restless folks on here tonight. So I've put in the code for that as well. But wonderful to hear such great feedback and story. So look, folks, loads of great advice in there. I'm going to circle back to Dr. Surya. Surya, a question for you that comes back to HRT before we move on with the conversation, but this felt like a nice juncture, or an appropriate juncture to come to this. We've got a lady on who's tried progesterone, and I presume that means the bioidentical and estrogen prescribed tablets, but she didn't tolerate them. So she had a lot of side effects. Dr. Surya, you know, without knowing her medical history, but in general, is there any advice that you would give her in terms of what she should speak to her doctor about?
I think generally tablets, a tablet by mouth, is that what she's saying, for her HRT?
Yes.
It's not normally the first port of call. So normally we would suggest in the first instance trying something through the skin as your main form of HRT. And so the estrogen comes in a gel, which you put on every day. There are patches as well, which stay on your skin for 3 or 4 days and change twice a week. And there is also a spray as well that you can use, which is tends to be a slightly lower dose preparation. But I think if you're not getting on with tablets, probably trying one of those might be a great idea. And also they have less of an impact on your blood clotting profile as well. And so from that perspective are probably safer options.
Yeah, and then I've just popped back in with another comment that she's tried creams and gels for estrogen, but didn't tolerate those either.
Well, I mean, the spray might be, that's not the kind of usual, one of the first go-tos, but there is actually an estrogen spray that's available on the market. It can be prescribed in the NHS, and that might be something that's maybe worth trying instead and seeing whether that works and she gets on with that.
What's that called again? I think we mentioned it in the HRT article, but just so everybody here knows.
Yeah, so it's a spray called Lenzetto, and you spray it on your forearm normally. It does it's licensed for a slightly lower dose, but certainly would be worth, I think, trying and seeing whether that she tolerates that any better.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Surya. So that was a really great conversation around the gynecological issues that can cause pain. And, you know, you'd have as much interest in stacking the dishwasher as having sex, really, wouldn't you, when it's not that much fun and very uncomfortable. So hopefully with, you know, what we've discussed just now, there's loads of great practical advice and tools and some fun in there as well, which is great to see. So we're going to shift gears now and move on to loss of libido. And again, coming back to you, Surya, before I come to some questions for Trudy and Eleanor in this, if we could just start with a quick recap of why do some women lose their sex drive when they go through the menopause transition?
Obviously, as we've talked about already, you know, all the hormone levels drop, and estrogen is an important part of that. But I think the other hormone that women do have is testosterone, which we tend to think of as a male hormone. It's not just a male hormone, we have it as well. And those levels can drop, or do drop usually, around the time of the menopause. And that can play quite a big part in the problems that women experience with their libido dropping off. It is something that can be prescribed. It's not actually a licensed medication in the UK, so it may be something that your GP isn't able to prescribe, but through a specialist menopause clinic, be that NHS or private, it's something that is available. Normally, testosterone is prescribed to women who are on estrogen and progesterone or estrogen HRT already. And one of the important things with testosterone is that if we try it, the levels have to be measured and we have to check those and make sure we're within sort of safe blood levels. But some women find it really, really effective, and it can have quite a big impact on the libido, and can be, you know, a really good one to add in as a kind of third arm of the HRT.
Brilliant, thank you, Surya. And I've added some links in about some articles that we've got on testosterone therapy and loss of libido. But it's interesting that there's a couple of comments in here from women on the call tonight saying that they've used testosterone or tried it and it hasn't really helped them regain their libido. So Trudy, this would be, I think, a brilliant point to bring you in, because sometimes, and Surya, I think you see it, testosterone doesn't work, you know, doesn't do what people want. Sometimes there are multiple things that one might need to do. And Trudy, I think you've got lots of experience in this area, you know, in terms of helping people to regain their sex drive, and not just couples. We had a really great question from a single lady at the top of the chat. You might have seen, Trudy, about how do you regain your libido when you're single and you're putting yourself out there and you want to start a relationship.
I think if we, I'll take the last question first, then while I'm still remembering it with my menopause brain.
I've made notes.
But yeah, I think when you're on your own and you're thinking about dating again, is to try and be sexual on your own, so that you know if you're menopausal, how comfortable you are. Because some women, they go and get HRT and the vaginal estrogen and the testosterone, and they've no idea in some ways whether that's working or not working. And so I'd just yesterday a lady, and she's been on her vaginal estrogen a couple of weeks now, and said to a partner, we should try sex because I'm seeing Trudy tomorrow. So that was kind of the night before. So they had sex purposely because they were coming back to see me. And actually she was shocked because it never hurt for the first time in however many years, but she didn't know because it didn't particularly feel any different. However, from that, she's another lady was saying that she could tell she was more lubricated even when she just went to the bathroom to go to the toilet. Everything felt more moist. She noticed a little bit of discharge in her underwear. Everything was like it used to be. But when you're on your own, I think you have to experiment, because when for a lot of women with painful sex, it's not just internal pain, but it can be external pain as well. So the clitoris can feel uncomfortable, it can almost feel stinging, not very much movement. So as alongside the moisturizers and the lubricants, we all in our clinic suggest they use their estrogen cream externally as well. So putting just a little bit on the finger, on and around the clitoris, really helps plump that skin up and gives more elasticity again, so you've got more movement alongside the moisture. So I would be encouraging you to buy one of those vibrators, which, you know, I've seen lots of samples of vibrators, and without self-declaring, I would suggest that you get that discount while you can and get that one. And just, if you've never used a vibrator, try it nice and slow. Because the nice thing about the one Ellen has shown you tonight is that it starts nice and slow. It has different speeds. It has different ways where it goes slow and then faster. So it is experimenting on your own. Because if you don't know what you like, how do you share that with somebody that either you've just met and you don't feel very confident about talking about either? As well. And for women who have been given all the HRT and everything else, if their relationship isn't very good, or maybe they've not had sex for a long time, maybe they've not even been on a date or you know, gone anywhere together in months, even years. I'll see some people who've not had sex for 5 years, sometimes more, and then they take all the products and they're like waiting for magic to happen. Whereas actually you've got to start again really with sex and adapt to the new life that you've got. I think I always say to a lot of women, and forgive me, some people may have heard this before, but the analogy I always use is when we're in our late teens or our 20s, we're like a microwave and we're red hot and we're ready really quickly. And then we have kids and settle down, get a house maybe, things like that. And then we're more like an oven and we need to be warmed up a little bit first. But then when we hit menopause, honestly, we're more like an Aga. We take a lot more warming up. But when we get there, hopefully we can last a lot longer. Well, we need to, because everything takes a lot longer. So it's important that more foreplay happens, longer foreplay, different types of foreplay, perhaps. It's not going to really be quite the same as it was. So we've got to adapt to that, acknowledge it, and engage your partner in that process with you. If you feel supported, you're more likely then to feel sexual. I've had couples where I've said to the woman about, oh, and do you ever sexual on your own? She said, oh yeah, I'm absolutely fine on my own. It's just when I'm with him, I don't want to do it. So, you know, you do have to look at the relationship and think what else might be going on.
And Trudy, you've seen, you know, thousands of couples probably over the years. What advice have you found really works best for people, you know, when they think about, because it's, you know, what if you really just don't feel like it? You know, you love the person, but you don't really, you know, and you've tried HRT, testosterone, nothing's working. What are your top tips?
Okay, so the big thing I will say to women is, if we wait for a big physical desire to take over, we're going to have a long wait, because one is we're not ovulating anymore, certainly post-menopausal. So we don't even get that middle of the month ovulation drive where Mother Nature says, make a baby, even if we don't want one. So they don't even always get that. But we need to come at it from a different angle. And I think date nights are really good. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean sex, and it doesn't necessarily mean spending lots of money and going out. You can create that atmosphere just in your own house, sit at your table, dress up for dinner, maybe get your nice underwear out again, because lots of women will put their old underwear on because they don't want to be attractive to the partner. And this isn't just heterosexual couples. This would be the same with same-sex couples, almost avoiding each other. And when you get two menopausal women together, wow, that is a different clinic setting. It's almost the argument of who's having the worst menopause. But I think if you think about it like food, we're not always hungry. But then we walk past a restaurant and get the nice smells, or we look in the baker's shop and there's the beautiful cakes, and suddenly our mouth waters and we feel hungry. And when we eat it, we think, oh, that was lovely, I'll have that food again. And sex is a bit like that. The more we are sexual, the more libido we're going to get as well, because we know it's good for us and it gives us that connection with our partner as well. Everybody's nicer to each other, more thoughtful, kinder to one another. You know, maybe you get your lawn mowed, or, you know, you'll even come shopping with you, or whatever else it might be. So I think sometimes it's quite nice to do a little exercise on your own, with starting with, I feel desire when ... and think of as many things as you can. I feel aroused when ... and that will help you find out what else is getting in the way, perhaps, as well. It's not just taking something. Foreplay isn't having your breasts and bottoms touched, certainly not when you're menopausal. The last thing most women want is to be groped at the kitchen sink. You know, it's that little bit more romance again, maybe going back to courting, proper kissing, somebody telling you you look nice, because a lot of women start to get poor body image, there's big changes, all of those sorts of things. So communication is key, really. And when I sort of talk about date nights, people say, oh, I hate all that planning. We like to be spontaneous. But in the busy lives that we've got, spontaneity takes great planning. We have to have a space for it. So if we create a space and we say we're going to have a nice date night at the weekend, when life's a bit boring on a Wednesday, you think, oh, at least I've got date night on Saturday. And you know, like I say, you might go out, you might just be staying in, maybe you get a movie, draw the curtains, turn all the lights off, get cozy under your throw, you know, go back to being more playful again together. Think about, what did you like about each other? What attracted you to each other? What would you like from each other? And even if verbally you can't say that, get your husband and yourself or your female partner, send messages to each other, send an email to each other if you can't express it in any other way. Start again from the basics, and don't focus on penetration. Focus on the nice kissing, the touching. That's just as good for us, that basic intimacy, which is what usually gets lost, more so in menopause.
Oh, that's lovely, Trudy. That's really warm and lovely advice that you're giving there. And I'd like to come back to you on two words that you mentioned, because sometimes we use them interchangeably, but they're different: desire and arousal.
Yeah.
So how do we... It'd be great to get, you know, in your experience, the difference between the two, because I think that will help us to identify what we need to work on.
Yeah, so a lot of women don't have spontaneous desire. They have more responsive desire. So we might respond to some sort of positive stimuli. Maybe we're watching a film or reading a bit of erotica or things like that as well. So a lot of women don't, I mean, I'm stereotyping a little bit, but a lot of women don't like today's pornography. It's, you know, it's how many orifices can you put it in? There's no story leading up to it. And it was interesting because when 50 Shades of Grey was released, we had our highest ever referrals. And when the women sort of came to see us, they sort of said, oh yeah, when I finished the book, kind of everything went back to normal. But when I was reading it, I was waking my partner up in the middle of the night, felt really sexy. And I remember asking quite a few women of, what was it about the book that turned you on? It was nothing to do with the sex that was in the red room. It was all about the romance, the intrigue, the chasing. I think the fact he picked her up in a helicopter and took her for lunch I think he then bought her an Audi R8, you know, for like a 21st birthday. I remember saying to my husband, if he bought me an Audi R8, I'll build him a red room in the garden, you know. So a lot of it is the story, it's the build up, all of those sorts of things. So reading a bit of erotic fiction, watching things that give good stimuli, you're more likely to be responsive. So I've heard couples where she has had testosterone and thought it hasn't done a lot, but then the husband has said, I can tell the difference, because if I go to put my arm around her, I don't get that, oh, get off me, you're annoying me. I get that, oh, that's really nice. So it might not be that she's swinging from a pole in the bedroom in her latest underwear, but it might be more subtle than that as well. I think you just have to experiment and see whether things are starting to feel different as well. So desire isn't always the first thing for women. It's quite often responsive, that it's the response to stimulus, and to let that thought keep going. Let yourself think, what kind of sexual person do you want to be now you're menopausal? Be that main actress, the producer, the editor of your film, and build on it. Think, if I could wave a magic wand, what would it be like? Because if we can't see or think of anything, it's difficult to get there. And when we have those moments where we think, oh, maybe I will have sex tonight. I've really liked him today. He's been really nice. We've got on really well. Yeah, I will have sex. Then you think, no, I've got all that ironing to do, or I've not painted my toenails, or, you know. So think, what does get you in the mood? What might work for you? And just experiment, try some things.
Trudy, I love that advice to write your own story. You know, be your own editor. I mean, this is the whole great thing about going through the menopause transition. It's the opportunity to really take stock and decide, who do you want to be in this stage of life, and, you know, maybe do things that you haven't done before, try out new things, because your body's changed. So you need to change around it as well, but accept it and love it and embrace it, and not try and constantly go back to the way you were. Absolutely. Because, you know, we're different now, we've changed.
Yeah. And I think it's hard. I love hearing you talk, Trudy, because it just all makes so much sense. But I think it's hard because we are fed stories of how we should be, or how we should be behaving, or how relationships are. And we don't have lots of, you know, movies don't feature many relationships and sexual relationships in older life. So we have this idea that we should be walking around in a certain way, ready to go at any moment. And we don't have anything out there that tells us a different story, actually. So we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to think how we should be behaving all the time. And that, I think that puts a lot of pressure on relationships as well.
And that's why we need things like this, so that we're normalizing it. Everybody on here tonight are normal. They're not odd. Everybody else thinks everybody else down their street are having sex every night. I can assure you they're definitely not. Our clinic is full 6 days a week, you know. So
but sex is so important to a relationship, isn't it? And keeping that bond. So it is important to talk about it. And I just want to call out this wonderful comment that we've had in the chat from someone who's, no names, but in their 80s, and she's saying they're using lubricants and toys, and sex is still very satisfactory. Is she normal or just fortunate? It sounds like we want you to be the norm. It's so brilliant, and thank you for sharing that. It's very inspiring, but that's what it should be. But it's like, let's own it and let's take charge of it. We've had brilliant advice there from Trudy, and a very practical question, Trudy. Do you have any recommendations for erotic fiction for slightly older women, really women of any age?
I think on, if you have a Kindle or whatever, it's quite good on Amazon when you type in different things on the Kindle, stuff around, if you prefer more romantic erotic fiction, or maybe set in certain eras, if you prefer period drama type thing. Lots of women who like period dramas talk a lot about Bridgerton. I haven't actually watched it because I don't particularly like period dramas, but women really rave about it. But I think that's the important thing. It's type in what type of things, and start with short stories, because then if you don't like the story, you can just flick to the next one. So period drama, romance, you know, younger, older, type that in, they come up.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm a massive Bridgerton fan. The storyline is great. It is pretty racy.
It is pretty racy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, don't watch it with your 14-year-old son. That would be my top tip. That was fantastic. So we've spoken about sex toys and we've spoken about lubrication. Trudy, some really brilliant practical advice. And actually, you wrote an amazing blog for us with your top tips and advice as well. And I'm just pasting that into the chat. It's brilliant. Summarizes beautifully what you just said in the chat this evening. Surya or Eleanor, any other thoughts of advice, you know, for women that you see who just want to spice it up a bit? And Surya, we've had quite a few questions on HRT and testosterone, so I will come back to those as well. But any other thoughts, any other recommendations that you would give, building on what Trudy's mentioned?
So, oh, sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say something that's really important, and it's not so racy, but a bit more practical. Something we all need to be thinking about is looking after our pelvic floor. And so this, when we're talking about our pelvic floor, we're talking about this basket of muscles that line the pelvic bowl. So they go from the pubic bone at the front through to the coccyx at the back and the side. So they are this basket of muscles, and they as we get older and as the whole of that system loses estrogen, those muscles do weaken, and it is a real case of use it or lose it. Those muscles are really important for stability. They're important for continence of both your bladder and bowel, and they're involved in sex as well, and they're active in orgasms. So making sure those muscles are looked after, and that's doing your pelvic floor exercises daily and forever, is really important. And it will be important to enhance your sex life, but it will also be important to maintain continence. And so if you're getting any leaking, either stress incontinence when you're moving around or jumping or coughing or sneezing, or that urge incontinence, the pelvic floor is where you sort of try and suddenly think you need to go to the loo and you don't have enough time to go to the toilet. So looking after the pelvic floor is going to be really important, because we know incontinence and a bit of urinary incontinence, or a lot, is very common as we get older, and as we go through the menopause. And that can really affect your confidence with your sex life, because you can feel less attractive, and you can be worried, that you're going to leak during sex. And it can also make the vulva really sore. So looking after your pelvic health is really, really important. So I'd say do your pelvic floor exercises. And then the other thing that we're doing a bit of work with at the moment, is the vaginal microbiome. So this is a really interesting area of medicine, and it is quite new, but there's been a lot of research done over the last few years. And when we get into the menopause, as those tissues of the vagina dry out, as we lose estrogen, that the supple, moist environment that houses good bacteria. So all our good bacteria that live in the vagina, and those good bacteria, a lot of lactobacilli, different strains to the bacteria, the healthy bacteria in your gut, but they produce lactic acid and hydrogen peroxide as they're working away, and that acidifies the whole of the vagina and the vaginal area and the urinary tract. And that acidification of the area fights off the bacteria that we don't want, the ones that cause bacterial vaginosis, UTIs, thrush. So, and then you end up in a real cycle. So you might find that you're suddenly getting more urinary tract infections as you get. So it's going back to making sure the area is estrogenized, using a pH balanced moisturizer that supports the healthy microbiome. And we have, and I've bought it today, it is quite a new, but we've got an oral probiotic supplement called Perfect V, which contains 4 lactobacilli strains that are found in the vagina. And we're getting some really good feedback from our ladies peri and post-menopause to support that healthy microbiome. So that's another really interesting area to look at. but it's so, you know, that, and I think of this as part of, you know, if we're not healthy and well through the menopause, then it's really hard to think about having a healthy and a good sex life. So we've got to get the foundational bits right first, and that's why it's really important to talk to your doctor, to try and, you know, see psychosexual therapist or see your pelvic health physiotherapist to get these bits right, because you can't think about having enjoyable sex till those foundational bits are right, as well. So I think that's probably really important.
Eleanor, would you mind sticking a link into the chat in case people want to find out more about the product? And how long are people typically taking it for before they see the impact, the positive impact?
So I've had ladies contacting me within a week saying this is amazing. And it really, really noticing that change in the lubrication, you know, the feeling moist again, feeling healthy, seeing a change in their discharge. So it's a really, it should be working quickly, but it, you know, to support that healthy microbiome, we need the area to be supple and moist, and we need to make sure we're not using products that are not pH matched to the vagina, because if you put an alkaline product in the vagina, then it kills off all those good bacteria that they're working hard to look after that area. I've written a blog recently, sort of explaining it in a bit more detail on the website actually, but I can I maybe post a link to the blog there for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I should say, Eleanor has recorded a brilliant video for us about how to do pelvic floor exercises. So we're just editing that, and we'll share that as well, I think, in the next couple of weeks. So thank you again for that, Eleanor. And a blog would be very welcome if you could do one for us and this as well. It sounds fascinating. I'm sure, you know, we'd love to share this more widely with the community. So unbelievably, we're into our last few minutes. The hour has gone really, really quickly. I've got a few questions for you, Surya, about HRT. And Eleanor, yes, request coming back, endorsing, saying, please, yes, the BioMe thingy, that's exactly what I would call it too. Thank you. If we could get the link in. Yes, menopause brain, I can't remember the name. You said it seconds ago, cannot remember. Dr. Surya, I can remember your name, yes.
Hello, oh, that's good.
Yes, and I can read, thank God. So Surya, we've got several questions here around HRT and testosterone. So I'm going to start with some of the testosterone ones. So there's a bit of a theme here of people taking testosterone for a while and not finding it working. And I think we've covered that with saying maybe try other things as well, like talk to somebody like Trudy. But one thing I really does want to call it out, because somebody said that their testosterone levels are very high from their last blood test. Now, blood testing and testosterone is really, really important, isn't it? So what advice would you give to somebody who's seeing elevated levels?
It is really, really important. I think one thing to just quickly address is if you do come back with a high level is, did you use a testosterone that morning after you shower and then go straight to your blood test? Because that can sometimes give you a falsely elevated level, in which case it might be worth repeating it again, maybe omitting the dose that day, or even use it the day before and then that day miss it in the morning, or depending on what time you use it, and then having your blood test to prevent that happening. But it's really, really important, if the levels are high, that you basically need to stop, have a break and recalibrate. I think sometimes just reviewing and thinking, are you using the amount that you're supposed to use? It can be quite tricky with the testosterone, because a lot of the preparations are originally designed for men, and so you're having to squeeze out a funny little bit and, you know, make a sachet last for 8 days or 10 days, or a tube last, and I think that can make it really quite difficult to get the dosing. And I think, you know, you need to stop and think, okay, what am I doing? Am I doing this right, hand on heart, or am I thinking, oh, I'll just add a bit extra? And I think if you're doing that, then that's really important that you're not doing that, because we don't want the testosterone levels to get too high, because one of the problems with testosterone is the side effects of changes you can get, and the first things are hair growth, and they're not reversible by stopping it. You then have to have hair removal, etc. You can have thinning of the hair on your head. You know, the various things like that. It can cause side effects, and making sure you stay within the safe levels is really important.
Thank you. Brilliant advice, sir, and really important to know. We've had a woman in the group saying she's tried HRT 2 separate times, and both times she developed uterine polyps. Is that a coincidence, or is HRT known to trigger that?
So it can, unfortunately. You're slightly more likely to develop uterine polyps. So polyps are like little skin tags, but they grow in the womb. And generally speaking, when you're on HRT, they're usually benign. They're usually not a cancer. But if you do get them, and it usually show up with some bleeding that you're not expecting, then they do need to be removed, and they do always have to be checked, just on the small chance that there was a cancer there. One of the best ways really to proceed with the HRT, if you are someone that tends to be a bit polypy and you're more likely to get them, is if you can have a Mirena coil fitted. That usually solves the problem. And certainly if you were to, if you were found to have a uterine polyp, you were going to have a procedure done where it was being removed, or you were having what's called a hysteroscopy, where they have a little look in the womb, then that's always a good time to say, actually, I want to carry on with my HRT. Please, can you pop a coil in for me? And the majority of the time, I think they'll probably be very happy to pop the Mirena coils. That's the hormone coil in for you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very, very useful and practical advice, Sir Surya. So we're drawing to a close. I'm just going to go around and ask, starting with Trudy, then Eleanor and Surya, any kind of closing thoughts. So we set out this evening to talk about the loss of libido in midlife as we go through the menopause transition, the importance of normalizing the conversation around it. This can be an amazing time in life, and that's what this conversation is about. It's about empowering. So Trudy, starting with you.
Yeah, I think I would say to remember how sex is good for you. A lot of people don't take that into account, and that we should focus more on pleasure and that word associated with sex as well. So some of the health benefits is that it helps us look younger, maybe even behave a bit younger, good for a kind of blood pressure. For some people, they say it's pain relief. The sleep before sex is never as good as the sleep after sex, so it does help with sleep, and a lot of women struggle with sleep. And as I said before, more sexual you are, more sexual you want to be, and then it gives you that connection with your partner much more. But it's not all about penetration. Remember, go back to basics would be my take-home message.
Brilliant. Thank you, Trudy. Eleanor?
Yeah, I just am always, when we've done these events, just really enthused by how many people want to come out and get this information. And that's a really good first step. And we can then shape the future that we want off the back of this sort of information. But I would say, if you have the confidence to, is talk about this with your partners. Whether it's a new partner when you're first dating, whether it's you've got a same-sex partner, whether you've been married for 30 years, actually explaining to your partner what's going on with your body. So it's not that I don't want to have sex, I just don't lubricate as much, because that's just biology. It really, you'll find often partners are worried too. They think, oh, you don't find me attractive anymore. And so if you have the confidence to have the conversations, you've had the confidence to come and get the information and then take that on. And I think a lot of partners, you'd be surprised how relieving it is to understand this. I would say that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Eleanor. And Surya?
I say probably as well as talking to your partners, is get some help. If you need help, ask for help, and don't be afraid to do so. That's what your health professionals are there for, and get the help you need and deserve.
Brilliant. So I think fantastic advice. So Surya, Eleanor, Trudy, it's been an amazing evening with you again as ever. Thank you for sharing your brilliant expertise and advice. And I think I'll borrow again from L'Oreal. We're having this conversation because you're worth it. So go out, get the help you need, get some of those fun toys and lubes on Eleanor's website. She's giving us a 10% discount. If you want to see Trudy, check out the Ledger Clinic. If you want to get some support from Dr. Surya, book an appointment with her online, speak to your doctor or GP, because you're worth it and you deserve your best life. So I'm going to hand back now to AD. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Helen. Couldn't agree more. And thank you all. Such a great event. Thanks to Dr. Surya, to Trudy Hannington, to Eleanor Gardner for this evening, for the amazing help, the amazing advice. And of course, thank you all for joining and asking your questions and sharing your experiences with us too. Following the event, you'll get a link to the recording in case you'd like to listen again or share it with any of your friends. So that's it. Thank you so much and good night, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.